Gary, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thanks.
Oh yeah, there's no volume yet. Nothing started, is it what it is?
That's right.
Thank you.
Kia ora, e nā kai konihera, nā kaumahi, me nā mema o te iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, kei tēnā hui konihera. Good morning, councillors, staff and members of the public. I welcome you to this council meeting C22/6. I te mea, koutou wiki o te reo Māori tēnei, ka waia atu ahau kia Chris, kia tīmata tomato, hui ki te tahi karakia. Aroha mai mo takaraya. As this is Maori Language Week, I'll now call on Chris to begin our meeting with a karakia.
Tēnā tātou. Tēnā hoki koe e te koromātua nau i whakaro ake ki tēnei wiki hei whakanui i tō tātou reo rangatira. Anō hoki te tuku te rākau ki au he whakatūwhera tō tātou hui. Just acknowledge you, Mayor Weber, for allowing us to open our hui today with karakia in light of this being Māori Language Week, and the karakia will touch on things that are happening around the world at the moment, particularly with the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Anō reira kei noi tātou. E honore he kororia ki te atua he maungarongo ki te whenua he whakaro pai ki ngā tāngata katoa. E pā tēnei mātou e koropiko nei mua i tō aroaro, me tēnei atu ki a koe ki a tau manaakitanga ki runga ki tēnei hui ngō tātou. Anō hoki te whakaro aki ki te pauri, a kua pā mai ki runga i te ao, i te ngaruhanga o tērā o ngā rangatira ara ko Queen Iri Hāpeti. Te whakaro ake ki a ia, ki tōna whānau i runga i te wā pauri, a tai atu ki ngā mate huhua o te wā, a kai wangani i a tātou katoa. Ko koe te timatanga te otinga o ngā mea katoa, roria ki tō ingoa tapu. Āmini.
Kia ora, Chris, and thank you for that, and many thanks for referencing the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. For 70 years, Queen Elizabeth II has been our head of state and is widely recognised as a person with a real and complete dedication to public service, and who has been a role model to humanity for that dedication to public service. Following the passing of Queen Elizabeth II and the proclamation by our government on Sunday, King Charles III is now the King of New Zealand. And I would now ask that we all stand for a minute's silence to recognise the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Thank you all, and please be seated. We now move into the agenda proper. Just to note, this meeting has been held under current COVID regulations, which were extended to October the 20th in the last couple of days. We have Councillor Gray and Thwaites joining us by Zoom. And we have an apology from Councillor Henry. Can I have a move and a second of that, Murray Benj? Sol, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. There are no late items. Are there any declarations of interest that anybody may have for today's meeting? No, nothing at all. We have had two requests for moving in the public forum. So we'll move straight to the public forum and call on Bruce McCabe. Bruce, you've got 5 minutes. How you want to spend that in talking or taking questions, entirely over to you.
Good morning, councillors. I'm Dr. Bruce McCabe. I'm the chairman of the Omokara Residents and Ratepayers Association. Today, I wish to present on agenda item 10.1, Better Off Funding Application. I think it's important to consider the policy background associated with the intended use of Better Off funding. And I refer to section 17A of the Elder Housing Report dated February 2021 that formed the basis for Council's decision to continue in elder housing, where 63% of respondents were in support of continuing in elder housing, and 58% of those wanted this activity to be self-funding. And 90% of those who responded said that if the activity was not fully self-funding, then this activity should be transferred to a community housing provider. Now, Council duly agreed to continue in our elder housing, but put some very firm caveats on that. The activity was to be ring-fenced, which means that the revenue from rental income covers the expenditure, including all interest costs of providing the activity. And they also stated that redevelopment will be funded from the activity revenue and external sources. But bear in mind that the activity was required to meet all its cost for monies from external sources. Resolution P22-5.36 passed by the Policy Committee on the 14th of June 2022, which I've included as attachment 1, provided policy direction for Council's involvement in housing. It also requested the CEO prepare a high-level investment program with an initial focus on elder housing regeneration and vacant land opportunities in alignment with Council's role outlined in recommendation 4 and its investment principles in recommendation 5. And it's worth considering at this stage, the recommendation 5E is particularly relevant to this decision-making process in that it states quite clearly that Council will ensure projects generate a return back to Council that covers project costs at a minimum. In other words, it's self-sustaining. I note very strongly that a high-level investment program has not been provided by the CEO. Firstly, considering the business case for the continuation of council-owned elder housing with investment in 7 units at Beach Road. And at this stage, I'd like to refer to attachment 3, where I prepared a very basic spreadsheet to test whether, with the proposed investments that have occurred and are intended, whether this elder housing operation is actually self-funding. So looking at elder housing after the construction of units at Beach Road, it has a current level of indebtedness of 894,000, and I referred to attachment 2 for that information. It's a response to an official information request. There was a building construction cost at Beach Road of 1.95 million. That was a contract price. Whether that's come in or over budget is not known. And there's an estimated cost of the land that was put into elder housing of 500,000. Now I've included that because this elder housing operation is meant to be ring-fenced and it's to meet all its costs. And if that is not put in as a sale or a lease agreement, then there's an opportunity cost to ratepayers and they will be actually funding the elder housing operation to the tune of that opportunity cost. So after that development, elder housing is in debt to 3.44 million, and that would result in an annual interest rate at an 8%. Now, some may argue that 8% is too low, but 4% is definitely too low. And you look at what happened in the 70s when interest rates went up to 25%. So I've hit a middle figure where it's quite likely that interest rates are going to settle, and there would be an interest payment of some $267,000 a year. And there would need to be a capital repayment of about $111,000 per year. And then when you add in the operating costs, and what I've used are 2019 figures from the Council's 17A report, it has to recover a cost of at least $963,986 per year to break even. In other words, to not be a burden on ratepayers. So when that transpires to a weekly rental, which is the only way this operation can recover costs, it has to charge at least $240 per week as rental. And at the moment, council is charging $184. And through discussion with Jody Rickard, I understand that council is resistant to charge any more than $240 a week. Now, looking at the second consideration, in other words, the proposed investment of $4.6 million in Heron Crescent, you add up all the debts and you end up with an annual total cost recovery of $1.5 million, which translates through to rental payments of $344 a week. And there you're pricing yourself out of the affordable housing market. You're way above where council would in fact entertain setting rates. Given that I'm running short on time, all I can say in my recommendations is that the report is totally deficient. It's inadequate for council to make an informed decision. I suggest that council not accept or not receive the report prepared by the CEO, and that it defers any decision making until it's got adequate technical information. In other words, business cases fully worked for the status quo. In other words, at the moment before Beach Road was invested in, the Beach Road investment and the proposed Heron Crescent investment, to see whether these investments result elder housing going into further debt and a load on the ratepayers. So to make one final point, if I may, the CEO's report is no more than a collection of unsupported accusations or assertions. If the council receives this report and acts on the recommendations of the report, I will be referring this matter to the Auditor General.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Are there any questions anybody may have of Mr. McCabe? Will appear not. Thank you very much. Councillor Murray-Benge.
Mr. McCabe, in your opinion, are you saying that the council would be irresponsible to actually approve this, receive this report?
I think he made that reasonably clear.
I'm making that abundantly clear. It's totally deficient. It's not what the policy committee asked for, and it would be irresponsible to make a decision on that dearth of information.
Thank you.
And the alternative, sir, in your opinion?
So with all due respect, he's already told us.
If I can just clarify in Councillor Murray-Benge's mind, my recommendation is that the council reject that report and ask it to be resubmitted with the requisite technical information for the council to make an informed decision.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Microphone. Try again. Just looking at your spreadsheet on depreciation, you've got the same figure for both, but there's obviously much higher capital costs in the second column. So should that depreciation figure not be larger?
Yes, I wasn't in the position to try and estimate what the operating costs or the council overheads or depreciation might be in the future. So I thought I'd give the CEO the benefit of the best case analysis, and I just put in the 2019 figures, and these show that elder housing as a ring-fenced operation will not be able to meet its costs.
But there appears to be no further questions. Thank you very much, sir. We now have a request from Kathleen McCabe to speak.
Thank you, Your Honour. My name's Kathleen McCabe. I'm an ex-lawyer, so my voice usually booms anyway, so I appreciate the microphone anyway. My name's Kathleen McCabe. I'm a resident of Omokara. Bruce has spoken to the quantitative assessment, which is the facts and figures which haven't been provided despite 3 Official Information Act requests. They've been clearly dodged. I'm going to talk about the qualitative assessment, which is usually the information that precedes the quantitative assessment, i.e. why is this needed? The reason that the council gave for investing in this area is that there had to be, quote, a gap in the housing market. Well, there's been no qualitative assessment as well as no quantitative assessment. So I spoke to about 13 real estate agents, and I accept that that's not the best information. One should really have market surveys and information from community housing providers, etc. But what they have said is that there is absolutely no gap in the older housing market because there's a thing called rest homes where if one has no money, one can get a subsidy from the government. Also in Omokara and in Te Puke, there are camping grounds and caravans which are used by older people. Also, the real estate agent said that there is no deficit in provision for older people. Older people don't tend to have parties where they invite Black Power, the mongrel mob. They don't tend to draw on the walls. They tend to be responsible citizens who pay the rent, and they are highly valued tenants. The market that was addressed quite frequently, despite my not asking, was in particularly for women who have younger children. And we've clearly seen that in the past week or so in the Sunday television program, particularly Maori women with 2 or 3 children who are in dire straits. But these dire straits, I am told, does not relate to the older market. Any questions?
You mentioned a request for information. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, Dr. McCabe gave 3 requests for information, the technical information, i.e. the costs, etc. And they have, despite 3 requests, the information has not been provided. But there has been no information on the qualitative assessment, i.e. the gap in the housing market.
You'll see in the back of the information, the letter from council in response to the OIA. So we did respond. Sorry, thank you for your, thank you. Excuse me, please. Thank you. Your time for speaking has completed.
Could you elaborate, please, Kath, on what Bruce was going to say?
With all due respect, that is unacceptable. And for an experienced councillor such as yourself, you should know better. Thank you.
Sir, this is public forum.
Thank
and
you.
We're entitled to the information that is being presented to us.
It's in your hands, Councillor Murray-Benge. The response from the Chief Executive is attached. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And just, I'll take this moment. We've had a request from the press for photographs. Does anybody object to photographs being taken in the chamber? It would appear not, so that's fine. We now call on Mr. Ross Gowdy to speak.
Good morning, Worship, councillors, staff. I'm here to support Bruce in the thing that all information should be on that agenda. It should be that if somebody picks this up in the future, they have got a clear line of why and how you made this decision. There is no financial information other than the bare essentials. There's no spreadsheet going forward about what the indebtedness is. There is no information about whether or not the $2 million debt, between $2 and $3 million debt in the elderly housing project is going to be paid off by the Better Off funding. And there's a whole lot of things there. So, and number 4 of the background should have all the resolution of the June 14th meeting. I also ask that this report be withdrawn and be resubmitted at the last council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Gowdy? Would appear not. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. We now have Jim Dowman and a group for number 3 Road. So Jim, I don't know who's going to be your spokesperson, but the floor is yours, and like all others, you've got up to 5 minutes. And can we share the screen for Monique and Dr. Right, please.
Morena, Mayor Webber and councillors, thank you for your time. So we're representatives of the Upper Number 3 Road region as residents and business owners. Excuse me. Today, we just want to bring up our concerns that have been brought in the past of the state and the condition of our road. Unfortunately, it is not in a position or a state that would reflect what most people would call a normal road for travel with their families, etc. To note, on a good day, our road is very average, to say the best. It's undersized. We've had the width of the road measured by representatives from the council, and they've stated it's well under what it should be for a two-car road. As this develops with rain, we quite often have all the wash that comes off that just destroys the road. And then if we have heavy rain, it's impassable by a standard car. Around the same point, there's also a lot of trees. There's a lot of debris around the region where these end up on the road, and again, it's impassable. Up to 4 trees has been on the road where people can't get in and out. The type of activities up there's farms, there's orchards, there's quite a number of residents. So sorry, just to clarify, this is not the area that's being currently worked on Lower Number 3 Road, but it's actually the top and the gravel road. And because of these issues, we're finding that there's a number of people with damaged vehicles, very close calls. We've had a school bus that has ended up in the side of the road, thankfully with no children in, but it was returning back to the main road. I guess what we're trying to get to the point is we don't expect a brand new road. As far as a highway, we don't need something that's going to pass 100 vehicles a day. But what we do need is something that's safe for our families. And we believe it's actually got to the point where the road is in such poor condition that there is the high likelihood of serious harm or even the possibility of fatalities on this road, because there's just not enough room for cars to pass. So I guess it's open to questions. We could fill you with a million different reasons why at the moment with the state of it. It never has been brought up to a full spec condition that you'd expect of a road nowadays. And so we're now just in the position where we would like to have something seriously looked at. And we believe the only way to really get it done properly is actually to get it sealed as the final destination, but there's so much work that needs to be done to the road to get it up to a standard where it is safe. So please, any questions?
Right, thank you. Before I go to questions, there is a complete file of the photos taken, councils, in your Stella pack. But are there any questions? Councillor Marsh and then Councillor Denia.
How often do you ever see contractors up there dealing with this issue that you've got on the road? Okay, we've had a lot of rain over the last few months. And do you see this being addressed?
No.
In
No,
any
we
way?
don't. No, we don't. That's part of the issue is unless we call about a problem and then we're told it's going to be a month till up to a month of till it was repaired, we don't see people coming in and eyeballing the problem. And I guess the issue is it's sort of band-aided. They come along, they grade it lightly, fill in the small undulations and the issues with gravel. The lightest of rain or standard sort of weather pattern will wash this into all the filled culverts. There'll be no drainage. It just then washes out the sides of the road to the point where then it then cuts across the road. The water runs down the road. And it's constantly just put back in a state of patch. So that, as I say, a standard day, it's average, but as soon as we have any sort of rain or any issues at all with weather, there's trees, it's impassable. If you saw it on a day after we'd had a good rainfall, you wouldn't want to drive down there with your family.
Thank you, Councillor Denia, and then Councillor Dean. Councillor Murray Bean.
On the 5th of July, we approved the seal extension list, and number 3 road between 11.8 k's and 12.8 k's was agreed to be sealed.
Yes.
Is that the section you're talking about?
That's the main section we're talking about, yes. So that's the worst part. Above there is still other issues, but that's not quite as severe. This is there's blind corners and narrow sections. This is correct. That is
Sealing that section will go a long way to alleviating your concerns.
absolutely. The main thing is there's not enough outlets of water to disperse from the road. There's no areas where it can physically get away from it. So its only point of travel for the water and whatnot is through the road. We've had areas there as wide as over a metre wide where I've got a large four-wheel drive and it's been very difficult for me to try and manoeuvre through, let alone anybody in a car.
Thanks, Councillor Dean.
Are you aware of the council app called Anteno, which enables you to report these issues and it goes direct to the contractors so things get done?
Yes, we are. Councillor Daly has just recently provided that information for us.
Okay.
So at this point, I don't believe anybody's used it.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Murray Bench.
What length of road are we actually talking about? And have you got any culverts for the drainage? And how many families live up there?
So do you have something like 23 families and businesses are up there. I believe the section of road we're talking about was, sorry, the councillor had mentioned, I think it was 11.20 to 12. Yeah, so it's just over close to 1.5 kilometres of the main section. And it's reasonably steep in sections. But yeah, it's the.
What occupations have people got up there?
So it's mostly farming, kiwifruit orchards. So there's over 300,000 trays of kiwifruit come out of there. So the kiwifruit season, there's a lot of traffic. There's also, of course, pruning season, trucks in and out, school buses. Those are the main occupations up there. Otherwise, it's residents and lifestyle blocks.
Thanks, Councillor Daly.
Chairman Leighton and Barry, you've raised this issue with me, obviously individually. I've been up and inspected the site with you guys. Jim, you talked about having to get out there with your shovel and actually clear some of these stormwater runoff drains yourself. Do you think the contractors are not doing the job they're supposed to be doing, or maybe they're not understanding the nature of the problem?
Yeah, well, in 5 minutes or less, I cleared an outlet 50 metres above our driveway the other day. And since then, that's taken all the water from there to the bridge is about 150 metres, so it's not running down the road there at all now. So if more outlets were provided properly, and there's proper culverts, you know, I've talked to engineers and they say that the road is definitely not up to the standard it should be for that road. And we've been living there, wasn't mentioned, but we've all been living there since 1975, so to speak. So we're not new to the place, but the road has slowly deteriorated more and more and got narrower all that period of time. And we've talked to council and we've corresponded with council from 2012, 2018, as far back as 2008. We did a submission and we were told that the road would be sealed within 5 years of 2012. Nothing's happened and the road is just deteriorating. And of course, there's a sanctuary up there now too, which there's a lot of traffic created there. People enjoy that up there and they should be able to get there easily. But we have friends and folk we know that won't come up the road because it's too rough for them. We'll meet you in town, they say. It's ridiculous.
Thanks, Jim, and your team. We have our staff, roading staff here today and have heard everything. Hopefully one of them will get back to you somewhere in the near future with where to from here. In the public forum, we can't make any decisions, but thank you very much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
No, thanks for the presentation.
We appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillors, we now move back into the agenda proper, and we'll go to page 8 to
10.1 first.
Do I have a seconder? We'll take item 10.9 first. Thank you very much. Which is on page.
Sorry.
Marsh.
10.1. She said 10.1.
10.1.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, we're good.
On page 102. Papers in front of you, councillors. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Murray-Bench.
Jody, what business case did you use to actually put this program in front of us?
I guess, Morena, Mayor Gary and elected members, through you, Mr. Chair. I think what we need to understand is where we're at in the process of putting this application together in the purpose of my report today. So the purpose of my report today is for us to have the elected members adopt the two key projects that we want to put into our funding application to DIA for the Better Off funding. We've taken the opportunity over the last couple of months to liaise with the DIA about that application, and we can confirm to you that the information provided to you here is sufficient for that funding application. There is significant work that needs to progress once we have that funding approval in place, including at this particular point in time, we only have a very high level concept plan for the Heron Crescent redevelopment. So we really need to, our approach is to have the application hopefully get approved. The first funding grant that we get through that is $500,000. And from that point on, we work on progress milestones. We can put in monthly invoices from that point on, but that will require obviously detailed costings to be provided. As we've set out in our recommendations, at recommendation 5, We will continue to report back to elected members on that progress as we go through. And of course, anything that we are doing will be within the scope of the agreed investment principles that the elected members adopted on the 14th of June 2022. So we have no scope, obviously, to operate outside of those investment principles. They're an adopted resolution of council, and we will be making sure that we're within those principles at all times.
As an experienced staff member, were you concerned that the funding that we're actually trying to use, apply for, was for actually compensating us for the loss of our three water assets? Were you aware of that? And tell me, was this the only option that for staff was put before you?
So through you again, Mr. Chair, we came to the elected members back in June, and we had that discussion around what do we want to apply for the Better Off funding. And we set out for you what the criteria is around that funding, which is really about trying to achieve better community outcomes through the use of that funding. And yes, you're correct, it is obviously part of the Three Waters transition program. So we got that approval from you first, and then from that point we have looked at how we can improve what are the two key projects we think are of most value in terms of achieving those housing outcomes. We've traversed all of that with you around improving community wellbeing, where this council felt was the best area to focus on for that. And that was your decision that housing outcomes was where we wanted to focus. So that's what we then progressed with.
Just remind
So
that was unanimously approved by council.
So tell me, Jody, will you work from the principle that the whole project would be ring fenced?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, once again, as per what you adopted on the 14th of June and the investment principles that are a resolution of council, we are bound by that as staff, obviously.
Thanks. Councillor Dean.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move recommendation.
No, sorry, we're taking questions first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'll come back to you though. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this is an approval in principle to apply for this funding. If at the end of the day, when the detailed numbers come through, it does not stack up, what's the back out position? Because we've applied for funding for something that we then decide not to do because it doesn't meet the criteria that we have set in terms of washing its own face and being ring fenced and not becoming a cost to ratepayers, etc. So where to from here if we don't go ahead?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, absolutely. That is something that we will need to work through, and that would be a decision for elected members to make around where to next. I just want to put on the table that there are a huge range of options that council could choose to take in relation to how you would make this wash its face if the kind of base assumptions that we have at the moment mean that it doesn't stack up. We're not anticipating that that's where we're going to end up, but if we did, there are many, many different approaches that you could then take to ensure that the ratepayers are kept safe through this process. So I haven't gone into details of what all those are at the moment, but I think we can assure you that there's many, many options available, in particular because what you're looking at is a land asset that is owned by the ratepayers and continues to be owned by the ratepayers. And now, of course, what we are looking at is generating a significant value uplift on that land value, and that value uplift is captured and held by council on behalf of the ratepayers. So that creates a huge amount of opportunities for you, I think, in terms of how you may then want to address any future decisions
just
you make.
remind us, we've gone through one of the reasons for getting better utilisation of the land is to get more units built. So like all spreadsheets, there's two sides. You've got to take the income. So if you double the number of units, you need to double the income. And we've also always said to our staff, they can manipulate the income because even at $300, it is still very reasonable rental for this sort of accommodation. So that's getting back to your question. In the cold hard light of day, if it does not add up, you give the money back to the Crown.
Thank you, sir. That's the answer I was looking for.
Councillor Scrimger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Another question for Jody in regard to this application and perhaps the concerns that have been raised this morning around the funding. Back in June, council considered this matter and decided that that was a good use of the opportunity. I know you can't be certain of the outcome of any application, but what level of confidence do you have around this application being approved?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to say publicly, very confident.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thwaites, you have a question?
No, I was actually prepared to second Councillor Dean's motion after receiving some wise counsel from Councillor Dean. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Well, I'll leave that on hold. We've got another question, I think, from Councillor Murray Bench or Councillor Sol. Is it? Right, Councillor Sol.
Your worship, basically my question has been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, well, there appears to be no further questions. Councillor Daly.
In the assessment and issues and options paper, there's talk about potential for external funding from central government agencies. In your opinion, well, how likely are we to access those funding sources through all those initiatives that seem to be coming from central government at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think my view, and it would be the view of this council, is that so we've put in a funding application or a registration of interest to a new fund that's been set up by the Ministry for Housing and Urban Development. That is the Affordable Housing Fund. And the first part of that funding is for housing developments that are for assisted rentals. Assisted affordable rental housing, which is, from our point of view, perfectly fits the criteria of what our elder housing is and is really clearly aligned with a really high area of need in our communities. So it looks really, from our point of view, we're in a really good position for that funding. Now, whatever decisions the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development make, or whatever their criteria is that they're looking at, their intentions, that's not something that we can know, but we have put in that registration of interest, and we do think it's a really good proposal.
Right, thanks, Jodie. And for those of you who watched the Smart Growth commentary by the Minister of Housing, anything that gets houses on the ground in this area is looked reasonably favourably. If any New Zealander doesn't think there's a housing crisis, then they're not living in New Zealand. So Councillor Murray Bench.
You raise an interesting question, sir, because I think Mrs. McCabe made the point that it isn't the older people that are having a trouble with housing. It is, in fact, the young people. Sure. And I'm not saying that we should be going into that, but what surveying did we do, Jodie, to show that, in fact, people who own big houses can actually sell and then go in for a rent to buy from this council, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
No, sorry, Jodie, I'll answer that. We have had several bits of information that we have a big waiting list for our elder housing already, which we cannot supply. And there is a submission we had recently, as Abbey Fields have been in, that in this area, the people in asset-rich, cash-poor are not in the ability to build a second house, which they can move into, because they haven't got the borrowing capacity. So the elder people over 65 cannot get funding from the banks. We've had a Bancorp speak to us here. We've had more than enough information. So I think let's leave the questions there. I have a mover in Councillor Dean and a seconder in Councillor Thwaites with recommendations 1 to 6. Is there any further discussion for or against that? Councillor Sol.
Your worship, basically, I still am quite concerned. I take the assurance from our staff that they would not breach our policy. And if that's the case, I feel a little more comfortable, purely on the basis that that assurance is there. For me to actually not support housing for the elderly would be quite out of character, I guess, because again, I know so desperately the need. So if our policy is not going to be breached, I am prepared to roll with the recommendation.
Thank you for that. I'll bring you back to we are in a governance role here. And this is an application for funding we're talking about. So speaking for or against the motion, Councillor Murray-Benge.
I'm speaking against the motion, Mr. Mayor. I find that when you look at the issues that this council is facing, gravel roads being one of them, a serious issue, and you then look at what the application is for well-being that we're going to make to the government and get a chunk of money, and that we can spend in one area alone, but we are free to spend it in any area that we think is important to the ratepayers of our district. And in my view, I always felt that roading was something we're way behind. And if with the people who made the submission this morning, I think they were very clear that there is a serious issue. And I've had Mrs. McCabe tell us, what did you do for deciding that in fact it was the older people who were in the most desperate position? And in actual fact, there's the young people who are young Maori girls. So the 700,000 to do the structure plan for Maori land, I think, sir, I do agree with it. I was hesitant to begin with, but I do agree with it. If you can do a structure plan and that would help to get houses built on Maori land, I think that's a good thing. But as for going down this track and going into paying for people to build a house for someone who has an $800,000 house, why can't they sell it and buy a cheaper house for their retirement? Why should this council actually go down the track of taking over what is government's responsibility when we've got our ratepayers to worry about? And they are already losing a third of their assets, and it's this chunk of money that's coming from government to compensate us for the loss of our assets. And it's just not good enough, because it's nowhere near the value of what we're actually going to lose. And so I can't vote for the recommendations at all. I think we should receive it and ask our staff to go back and come back with a proper business case for our full council meeting.
Councillor Dean and Councillor Denia and Councillor Daly.
Mr. Chairman, I'd reserve my comments
To write a reply. Right, yes. Councillor Denia.
Housing is the single biggest thing we can do to improve wellbeing, which is why I'm supporting this resolution. And this is about leveraging council resources and government grants, not ratepayers funding it. I'm concerned about some of the spurious financial analysis that's been presented today, and the creative use of how we normally do project finance. So I will be supporting this motion.
Councillor Daly.
Yeah, I'm supporting this motion recommendation. Well, I'm comforted in the knowledge that Te Puke Holiday Park beckons if my luck falls by the wayside, but I think I've heard from all the mayoral candidates in the election process that housing is one of the top priorities for them.
Back to the agenda, please.
So I'm supportive of this. I think, our increasing our elder housing units is a great opportunity that we have without unnecessarily burdening the ratepayer. And I've always advocated that the rental figure used in this analysis is a little bit light, and that our elder housing residents do actually have a very good deal and there is an opportunity to increase the income if we so desire, if we need to. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks, it falls to you, Councillor Dean, for your right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in a unique position because I don't have to say things that get me elected again. I believe that this is an incredible opportunity. This is money that's given to us by the government, and we're going to use it wisely because it's a moral and ethical thing to do. Elder citizens are not well off. Contrary to the misinformation that we've heard this morning, we have a requirement that the people who get into these houses have to have a very minimal asset base. They cannot have, in fact, I recall we raised it from 20,000 to 50,000 so they could actually keep a car. The elder housing portfolio is desperately in need of being updated. We've all agreed on that. And here's the opportunity where money from government will allow us not only to do that, but to increase the number of housing, the amount of housing that we provide, which will increase the income, as has been mentioned earlier. And that is why I totally support this and have moved the motion.
Right, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
There's two. The division. Those against? Councillor Marsh, Councillor Murray-Benge. Those for? That's, I thought 10-2, all those 8-2 because we, no, 9-2. Yes, I got you, Don and Monique, thank you very much. So councillors, we now go back to item 8.1, which is pages 8 to 40, which is receipt of the community board minutes. Can I have a move and a second for that, please? Councillor Murray-Benge, Councillor Scrimger, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. Before I go any further, I would like to welcome Adele Henderson to the council, who is a new appointment. John, you may want to introduce your new colleague. Adele, please stand and don't do a pirouette or anything like that. We don't require that here.
Kia ora and good morning, council. It's lovely to be here. My name is Adele Henderson. And I feel very privileged to be part of this council, even though we've obviously had a number of outgoing councillors. I have met some of you to date and wish you all the best for your campaign. I have a 15-year local government background, having worked for Wellington City, Napier City Council, and looking forward to supporting the future endeavours of Western Bay Plenty Council. And yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to say hello this morning. And kia ora.
Thank you. And Don, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, can I just be cheeky enough to say that Adele did the identical degree to me at university, but her A passes far surpassed my C passes. So you better to listen to Adele in the future. Thank you. Or maybe I got some B passes actually.
All right, so yes, I don't know that actually helped her career move, but Adele, welcome to the team, and we wish you all the best. We now move to page 41, which is the minutes of the Performance and Monitoring Committee on the 4th of August. Councillor Granger, Councillor Daly, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, no. Carried. We have a little technical glitch. We now move to page 50, which is the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee of 9th of August. Councillor Denyer, Councillor Granger, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 58, which is the minutes for the council. I'll just make a point that there's a new point 2, that the following amendment be made to item 11.5 minutes to Kaimai Ward. This picks up the issue that we had in the meeting. Now we're just confirming it in the minutes. So a mover and a seconder for that, I presume Dean and Granger. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 77, which is the minutes of the Policy Committee held on the 16th of August. I'll move that as the chair. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Monique Gray. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 84, which is the minutes of the District Plan Committee held on the 23rd of August. Move it, Dean and Scrimger. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now go to page 88, which is the minutes of the Regulatory Hearings Committee held on the 23rd of August. Mover for that. Councillor Dean, Councillor Dean. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 93, which is the minutes of the Policy Committee, the 23rd of August. I was the chair. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Daly. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to 10.2, which is a report on the Wairoa Valley Strategy Review. Are there any questions of staff on this? It is a thing we need to do. It's a pretty good report there, but are there any questions on the report? It's on page 112. Councillor Denia and Councillor Dean.
Yeah, I noticed there was one response to iwi consultation from the one of the groups in the Rupu. Can you clarify whether that was the response from just one of the constituent groups, or was that the general feeling of the whole group, or did you just not get any responses?
I might just pass that over to Chris to respond to. He received the feedback from the Rupu.
That's the Rupu that we've got a response from.
Kia ora, Councillor Denia. What I can say to the feedback that we've had from iwi is, while that was one formal response that we had, conversations that I've had with the group widely suggested there was support for what's been proposed with the review. Thank you.
Councillor Murray Benj and then Councillor Granger, Councillor Dean.
This issue goes back a long, long way, and having been part of it originally, Cheryl, where does it start from McLaren Falls Bridge? It doesn't start from there, it starts further down, doesn't it? Is it by Pori Pori Bridge?
I think I was involved in the original strategy as well. So the description that's in the report clarifies the scope of the strategy. So
yes, I just had that question when I read the report as to where it actually started.
Yep, so the intent was for it to start from the McLaren Falls Bridge downstream to Tauranga
It's in the
Harbour.
report.
I know that, sir, but I just felt that at the time there was a lot of talk about protecting the left-hand side of that river, and so that it was started from further down.
Yeah, so it's, as per that description, but it was both sides of the river. But I do remember when we did the first strategy, there was quite a bit of discussion around whether or not the scope should be extended to include all the tributaries as well, because of the impact, obviously, that they have on the water quality of the river. But what is in the report generally reflects what the current scope of the strategy is, and I guess as part of the review, that could be looked at as well.
I think you'll find as we go through the review and the RMA comes in, it will be a review of the catchment. It's going a lot wider, and that's just the way it's going to be, I think. And that's what the report is highlighting here, that we need to do the review. It's not going to happen quickly, but it needs to be in process. So we've got Councillor Granger and then Councillor Dean.
Thank you. Are we confident that our partner councils in that area are fully up with this report and taking it into consideration in their plans?
No, I'll respond to that. Yes, they are. But many of the issues, and I see a wry smile from Mrs. Davies over there. I think the significant issues will be our neighbours to resolve. And that's why it's going to take some time to go through the process. This is just a heads up that we need to do it. But I doubt the next triennium might see it completed. This will take a while.
And can I just add to that, we did share the report with Tauranga City staff and with Bay of Plenty regional staff, so they are aware of what we're recommending here and on board with it.
Okay, Councillor Dean.
Is there a risk that this review will take so long that work will actually have started in the Tauriko western area, and it will therefore sort of trample over it?
As I said, those are issues for our neighbour to resolve. They're aware of the process that we and have agreed to the process. But these are the issues that will need to be resolved to get this completed.
Can I just add to that as well? I mean, I think there's probably a greater risk if we were to go down the path of doing the strategy now and we're just duplicating processes that are already in place. So kind of recognising that there's already all these things that are happening that also have quite a big impact in terms of capacity of tangata whenua kind of input. That kind of information will be really valuable when we actually do the strategy review to inform it.
Thank you. There's no further questions. We have recommendations 1, 2 and 3 there. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Dean, Councillor Murray-Benge. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 118, which is the revocation of the car rallies policy. Happy to move, Councillor Granger, and seconded Councillor Denia. Have you got a question, Councillor Daly? Oh, right. Need to be quicker then. Thanks. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. We now move to page 123, which is the addition of the Macron as per the request from the Makara Primary School. Are there any questions there? Murray-Benge and Sol. Thank you, Corey. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. I declare that carried. We now move to page 129, which is the district plan and the district licensing committee, which is a formality. We need to keep these in play until the next election. Councillor Scrimger, Councillor Sol. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. We now move to page 132, which is the appointment of a controller, which is just a mandatory thing we need to do. Councillor Denia, Councillor Granger. I'll put that. All those in favour, please. Everybody move the Macron, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary. It's obviously election time. Everybody wants their page in the book. We now move to 10.7, which is Tourism Bay of Plenty Statement of Intent. Are there any questions of staff? Jody, is anybody? It's pretty self-explanatory. Do I have a mover and a seconder then, please? Councillor Sol. Oh, Councillor Daly. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, no. Carried. If I can have somebody now to move us into confidential, please.
Sir.
Councillor Scrim.